Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's my honour today to rise in adjournment proceedings to pursue a question I asked in question period on March 9th. It pertains to a new report. It was commissioned under the previous government, chaired by former Cabinet Minister David Emerson, and is focused on Canada's transportation system. There is much that is good in this report, and there is much that is food for thought. But in the absence of any national transportation policy or strategy, I have to say that I found much of what was in this report quite alarming, particularly as it relates to Via Rail. Now, what I asked on that day of the Honourable Minister of Transportation was whether the Minister could confirm that the government will protect Via Rail and restore and invest in our Trans-Canada Rail service. The response from the Minister of Transportation was to say that other levels of government and stakeholders have an opportunity to review this report and share their perspectives before the government addresses specific recommendations. So let me just turn to the specific recommendations relating to Via Rail, which are on page 182 of Pathways, Connecting Canada's Transportation System to the World, a report by, as I mentioned, a Commission on Transportation established under the previous government and chaired by the Honourable David Emerson. The report's recommendations are not entirely bad in relation to Via Rail. Very significantly, they recommend that there be a legislative framework for our passenger rail service. In contrast to Amtrak in the United States, where there is a statute, a legislative framework that says the purpose of Amtrak is to move people around, to provide efficient passenger rail service. Via Rail has been given a very disadvantageous position, created when CN and CP were rolled out and parts were privatized. Via Rail was left without a legislative framework and without access to dedicated rail. A lot of Canadians won't know this, but passenger rail service depends on freight giving passengers the right of way because freight owns the rail lines, therefore they own the traffic lights. And that's why those of you who've ever gone on Via Rail will say, why did we spend a half an hour on the siding for a train that was coming so much later? Freight in Canada and the length of rail cars have become, not the cars themselves, but the number of rail cars in a single train on freight have become so long that they don't fit on any siding. But passenger rail fits on sidings. So passenger rail gets shuttled to the side so freight can go by. I like the fact that this report says that there will be a legislative framework that articulates government policy on passenger rail. What worries me deeply, Madam Speaker, is this recommendation, that the government should consider the elimination of subsidies for the Toronto-Vancouver service. Note that word subsidies. We never hear any level of government talking about subsidies to our highways. We subsidize our highways for sure. Large trucking companies get a great subsidy because the people of Canada keep repairing the roads that their heavy vehicles wreck. They are subsidized. But when you talk about highways, politicians always say we invest. Well, we need to invest in Via Rail because I can tell you as a frequent user, yes, believe it or not, at least once a year I go Toronto to Vancouver. I'd like to do it more often if it was faster. But it's not just tourists on that run. There are families, and it's their main way of getting from Edmonton to Saskatoon, for example. A route where you can travel with your children for free. If you're reliant on air traffic, your whole family has to pay per ticket. Via Rail offers something that flights don't and that privatized rail never will. We must protect it.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am pleased to have this chance to highlight our government's recognition of the important role intercity passenger rail plays in supporting Canada's overall economic prosperity and in the well-being of individuals. Historically, intercity passenger rail networks have played an important role in linking communities in our country from coast to coast to coast. Today, Canadians continue to benefit from safe, efficient, and reliable passenger rail service for traveling between communities, whether for work, vacation, or visiting family. Via Rail carried more than 3.8 million passengers to various destinations throughout the country in 2015. While a majority of these passengers travel between Canada's most populous cities in Ontario and Quebec, approximately 90,000 passengers traveled on Via Rail's Western Canada long haul, the Canadian, which operates between Toronto and Vancouver. Given the importance of passenger rail services, I am pleased that it is featured prominently in the final report of the Canada Transportation Act Review, or the Emerson Report. Specifically, the review was mandated to consider how federally regulated passenger rail services can be delivered to meet travelers' needs while minimizing costs to the public purse. As you know, our government tabled the review's final report on February 25th, 2016. The final report provides important findings on a range of issues pertaining to Canada's transportation system, including intercity passenger rail services. Our government is carefully considering the report's findings and any actions required to further strengthen Canada's transportation system. As well, we are looking forward to engaging further with Canadians on the report and its findings. On April 27, 2016, the Minister of Transport launched an engagement process with Canadians, stakeholders, and provinces and territories to take place over the course of the spring and summer 2016 in order to hear views and discuss ideas that will inform the development of a long-term agenda for transportation in Canada. There are a range of recommendations relating to passenger rail services presented in the review's final report. At the same time, there are also important considerations relating to various options for the future of passenger rail in Canada. For example, VIA is putting forward a case for revitalizing services in the busy Quebec City-Windsor corridor. On February 22, 2016, the government released Budget 2016, which includes $3.3 million to support an in-depth assessment of Via Rail's high-frequency rail proposal. In this context, the government will want to take the time necessary to determine the best approach to providing safe, efficient, and reliable passenger services in Canada that meets the current and future needs of Canadians. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Sandwich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What a joy to participate in a debate in adjournment proceedings where the comments from a parliamentary secretary are relevant to the topic at hand and actually responsive to my concerns. It's new in the 42nd Parliament, and I want to thank the parliamentary secretary. But I would love to find out how we can do more. I'm very concerned that Via Rail needs to have the full board of directors fully appointed. There are vacancies on the board of Via Rail. There are qualified Canadians who care about passenger rail service who should fill those vacancies. From coast to coast, we have, as a result of Sir John A. Macdonald's national dream, a rail service. But it should not resemble an antique or a historical artifact. We need to modernize. We need to make sure that we offer people an option that gets them off planes and out of their cars and enjoying Canada from tracks that are modern and efficient. This is a tall order, given the neglect of our rail service for so long. I welcome the interest of the current government.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Across Canada, passenger rail services link Canadians with other communities, allowing them to visit family and friends, pursue professional opportunities, and enjoy a range of cultural and tourist activities across the country. Our government recognizes the importance of Via Rail. We will want to take a carefully considered approach to ensuring passenger rail services meets the needs of Canadians today and 30 years into the future. The government's decisions will be informed by the findings presented in the final report of the Canada Transportation Act Review, which includes several recommendations that relate specifically to passenger rail services in Canada. Our government looks forward to considering the report, its findings, and possible actions to enhance Canada's transportation system. To that end, we are in the process of developing a forward-looking agenda for Canada's transportation system, including passenger rail services. Thank you.